For a long time, for so many years, I've known something was wrong, but now doctors do too. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. So obviously on my channel in the past, I've done a few videos talking about my own personal health. Some of this includes Accutane for my skin, and some of it, a little while ago, has been about women's health, talking about the Implanon and my experience with it. This video today is going to be more along those lines, as I'm going to be talking about something that I've been struggling with for many years, and I've spoken a little bit about here and there in the past. The fact that I have really bad periods, the fact that I have really bad back pain, and this is kind of all tying into that. I think I did a video a couple years back about my first laparoscopy and how there were no findings. This also comes into play, but I'm just going to kind of tell the story from the start. I thought I'd let you know what this video is going to be about prior to getting into it, so if that is of interest to you, please keep on watching. So I guess starting at the start, I had my period when I was 12, which I would say is early, not the earliest out of everyone, but definitely in the early range. When I spoke to my mum about this, she didn't seem to think 12 was that early because she had hers that age as well. But compared to all of my friends, I knew so many other people that got theirs when they were like 14, 15. So that's when everything started, although I didn't have painful periods right off the bat. I'd say for the first couple of years I was okay. But obviously it was still an inconvenience that I just learned to live with. At about age 15 was when I went on birth control, mainly for my skin. Around that time, and obviously up until recently, I've had skin troubles, and I thought that would help, and doctors thought so as well. I did also have very heavy periods, so it was quite appealing to me to be able to skip. But again, they weren't super painful. They were getting more painful as years went by, but at the time the biggest issue was the fact they were heavy, and have pretty much always been heavy. Truly, when the heavy pain started with my periods, I think I was about 18, so obviously that's 6 years into getting periods, and that's like 10 years ago now that I started to have pretty debilitating periods. I was given different types of contraceptive pills. They trialed me through a whole bunch of different ones, and I think that was around when I first started getting prescriptions for codeine. I haven't really tried any other high-dose painkillers, but that's when I started taking that. Because I was taking the pill, I would skip my periods a lot by not taking the sugar pills, but every now and then when I eventually stopped taking that and had the sugar pills to actually have a period, I would still be in crippling amounts of pain. And I also had pain at just different times during my cycle, and the persistent back pain was always there too. I never really thought that they were related, however, my back pain always worsened during my period. And I'd been to so many GPs. I remember once, and this is something technically small, but it always stood out to me. One doctor told me, sometimes people just have pain for no reason. And safe to say I didn't go back to that doctor, but I just thought, that's not right. There is always a reason for pain. You might not be able to see it, but there is always a reason. And I felt like I was just sort of being dismissed. And this is such a common thing. I know when people have undiagnosed chronic illnesses, endometriosis, adenomyosis, and maybe PCOS as well until it's diagnosed. I'm sure you will feel just palmed off as well, because that's definitely how I felt for the longest time. Even though I was never taken fully seriously, doctors would run me through the rounds of doing all sorts of basic tests like blood tests. I've had so many internal and external ultrasounds. I've done MRI, basically every little thing that they could do just to try and check the abdominal area. Obviously all of those tests found nothing, and I think that's probably part of the reason why doctors didn't take me seriously. They just did basic tests, maybe weren't really sure what they were looking for with my strange assortment of symptoms, and I would just continue to suffer every time I bled, and like I said, at random times in the month. It was around, I'd say, age 20 when I first started getting weird pains in what I now know as my ovaries, but I wasn't really sure then. I think the first time it was quite bad was when I actually went to the hospital because I thought my appendix was going to burst. I even called, in Australia there's this number that you can call and speak with the nurse to give basic questions, and they can answer them and then refer you what to do. So I explained all of my symptoms, and she said, it very much sounds like your appendix is giving you grief. Go to emergency. So at the hospital, I remember they were doing all these quick little tests. I don't even think I had a scan or anything. They did the push test, and I've always thought about this since then because obviously I'm having a mental blank. The appendix is on the right side, right? Anyway, apparently if you push in on that area when you're having an appendix pain, if you pull away at that moment, like when you move your fingers, it's meant to hurt. That's what they did, and they just checked a few other things and determined that it was actually an ovarian cyst. They told me to take Nurofen and it will dissolve, and that's all there was to do. That first time was really bad, and I wish that I had more clarification at the time, because I think it would just help me have a bit more clarity on what to expect for the future and what to do. Around the time that I started to have pain with my ovaries, and it wasn't just random times that it would spike with what I believe would be cysts during the month, but also some things would make it hurt more. Like if I would go from sitting to standing, I would feel a sharp stabbing pain on either of my sides. But around that time, like I said, when I was about 20, I heard endometriosis and heard about that for the first time, just because one of my friends had it and she battled for a long time with it before she got a diagnosis. I think, if I remember correctly, she said she had 3 laparoscopies before they even found it, let alone started treating it. I guess it was just hiding in a very far away place and the doctors hadn't found it yet, but she had the pain the whole time. Now, she was the one who proposed to me that she thought I might have the same issue because I had pretty much every symptom. And the symptom list is incredibly long. I'm just going to put something up on the screen so you can see why this troubled me to hear, but in some ways it made me feel a little bit better because I thought, okay, this is something to work with. Maybe I know what's wrong. And I started seeing a gynecologist a few months later to sort of figure out if this could be a problem I was dealing with. During the appointments, she did confirm or validate my symptoms to a certain extent. She didn't have the best bedside manner, but she did say that she was willing to do surgery just to see if we could diagnose endometriosis, and if it was there, she would ablate. So I'm going to get more into that in a sec, but if there is endometriosis there, it's possible to burn it out or possible to cut it out. Maybe it seems obvious which would be better. While it is obviously a bit more of an aggressive way to remove something, cutting it out is just so much more effective because it gets rid of the root and all. But I remember, I think it was when I was still 20, right after I had this check-in at the hospital with the, appendix scare, cyst issue, halfway through that year was when I was booked in for my appointment to have the surgery, or booked in for my surgery for a diagnostic laparoscopy. And that truly means it was about 8 years ago. Funny thing with, again, I'm going to be talking about endometriosis, but obviously by the title of the video, you know it's something different I'm dealing with. But that takes, I think they always say 7 years to diagnose, on average, sometimes more, sometimes less. I've waited all up 8 years since a surgery for a diagnosis, and I've waited even longer with pain before I even truly started to try and find what was wrong with me. So it really is a waiting game with these sort of diseases. When I went into my surgery, I really expected they were going to find endometriosis. There was no doubt in my mind. I thought that's what they're going to find. I had 2 incisions, and again, I'll have a look back at my old laparoscopy video to see if it's relevant to link, but I explained a little bit more about it back then. In truth, I've forgotten so much about last experience, but I was so certain they would find it. And I remember in the recovery room when I woke up, I was half out of it, as you would be when you come out of general anesthetic, but one of the nurses was talking about get her more endone just for pain relief, and I remember her saying, oh, did you say endometriosis? Did they find it? Did they find it? Because I just wanted confirmation. And lo and behold, they didn't find anything. I remember speaking to the doctor as I left the hospital that day. I did have a follow-up appointment booked, so that's where I'd talk all about it, but she did speak to me the day that I left the hospital, the same day rather, and I was so distraught. I remember her telling me that they didn't find any source of my pain, and I was basically inconsolable. To say I was so disappointed at the fact that they didn't find what was wrong with me, I can't put into words unless you've been in a similar experience. It's probably really hard to imagine, because I definitely didn't want to have a disease. I didn't want to have some sort of chronic illness, but I also didn't want to have chronic pain with no diagnosis. So things seemed pretty hopeless for a bit. I remember after going through the laparoscopy, they sort of said maybe it's something relating to my gut or along those lines. I'm sure everyone with similar abdominal pain relating to their reproductive organs has been diagnosed with IBS. I certainly was. I had a endoscopy and a colonoscopy, which resulted in no findings yet again, but I really doubted it because, again, all of my pain was kind of interlinked with my periods and branching off from that. It was all uterus, ovaries. I did not think I had some sort of issue with my colon. Obviously, after all these checks came back with no results and I was basically told there was nothing wrong with me, I gave up for a good few years. Every time I was hurting, I just thought, oh well, there's nothing I can do. Every time I had a debilitating period, I would just take my codeine, I'd curl up into a ball with a heat pack, I'd have to take a day off work, but I thought, oh well, I guess it's going to be life for the rest of my life whenever I have periods and whenever I have bad flare-ups of pain. And I will say getting the implant on did give me some relief, because it gave me a longer time frame from getting my periods. On average, it was about 6 months after it started to level out. But at a certain point, and this wasn't in the first time I had the bar, I think the first time it lasts, let's say 3 years. I know I've done videos on it, but my memory isn't that great. I had my bar replaced because I thought it worked well enough, even though when I did get my periods, they were still horrendous. It just spaced it out enough for me to manage them. But on my second bar, which is still in my arm right now, I have started to have some issues, and this is starting now more in present day, just a couple months ago. Starting in October last year, I had a period that began and lasted for 3 months. To sit here and say that sounds kind of crazy, like why would it go for so long, and why I didn't get a doctor's appointment until 3 months after. That's the only reason why it stopped, because I saw my GP and she put me on the pill on top of my bar. So it's very weird. I remember, and for me, I get a lot of brain fog when I'm on my period. It's very heavy, but it was just so overwhelming at the time. I didn't even truly know how long it was lasting until I looked at a calendar and sort of thought about it one day. I remember I just thought, this has been going on a really long time, but I was also kind of feeling like a zombie, so I just wasn't in any frame of mind of taking care of myself. But yes, I realized that it was 3 months, so I went to see the doctor and they put me on the pill and it did stop. I think I was on the pill just sort of continuously taking for 2 months, she said. When I stopped, I got another long period. This one was only 3 weeks instead of 3 months, so it was starting to improve. Then after that, I've just gotten another period now, but here's hoping it's not a long one. Either way, I think before long I'm going to have another solution, because there's more coming into the story now and a hopeful plan for the future. In amongst settling my period down with my GP, who I will say, she's fantastic. She takes me very seriously. This is a doctor that I used to see back when I lived in my old house, which is a little bit further away, but I've still traveled to see her because I think she is so fantastic and just validates everything I'm saying. She does seem to take things seriously. It's kind of funny, she does call and remind, like, even though I don't go regularly, and I hadn't been there for a pap smear before. When I told her this, she put me on some list and called me like a couple months later and said, we need to see you for that. Like, she really does take care of things and has like the best initiative of any doctor that I've ever seen. So grateful for her, because I think without that I probably would still be in a similar place of not getting help. But in amongst her sorting out the constant period issue, I had just had enough. So I sat down online one day and started looking again into my symptoms, thinking, all right, I was told there was no endometriosis, but I truly have every symptom. I have, even if I don't have endometriosis, something is wrong. So after a bit of fishing around online, I ended up in Nancy's Nook Facebook group, which is a big Facebook group for endometriosis and adenomyosis, I think some other gynecological issues, but it is such a good resource. I'm sure I'm sure if you're watching this, you've probably seen similar videos before. I know I've seen pretty much every video on YouTube about endo and adeno or adeno. I'm not sure how to shorten that, but I've seen every video, and so many times people talk about Nancy's Nook. It's great. Definitely join if you haven't yet, if you've got issues relating to reproductive organs and pain, because I think it's a very helpful place to be. But through Nancy's Nook, I was just sort of researching and finding a bit more validation again that something was wrong and I needed to do something about my situation, because it wasn't normal to be in that much pain that I was every so often. And with the prevalence of my periods sort of ramping up, I thought, I can't live like this. I can't take time off work every time I bleed. I can't take such heavy painkillers for so long because it makes me spacey. I can't do too much. It just really sucks the life out of me. I feel like a zombie every time I'm on my period, and it's just even not the period pain, it's the constant or semi-constant back pain, the cramping, the pain in my ovaries. It's just not normal. And for a long time I thought it was. It feels weird to see a TMI disclosure somewhere here, but obviously we're way in deep for that. Because I was told everything was fine, I didn't think anything twice after a little while when I would bleed pretty much every time I had sex. I thought, well, there's nothing wrong with me, that must be normal. Yeah, that's not normal. But in amongst doing my second round of research recently, I also found a website, I think it's called Endologics, but this is by Dr. Graham Trunk. He has a questionnaire where you can sort of input your opinion of your physical state, answer all these questions about symptoms, and also a spot to include photos for previous surgeries. And this is what I did. I included photos from my previous laparoscopy and just wanted to hear his opinion. I knew that he was an excision specialist in Brisbane, where I live, so obviously it would be helpful if I could see him if something was wrong, but I wanted to know one way or the other what he thought, because he's obviously an expert in his field and he is an excision specialist, so he can cut stuff out instead of burn it away. Already that tells me everything I need to know. His specialty is endo and adeno, instead of just being a general gynecologist and obstetrician, which is what I found out my previous doctor was while she did the surgery, and she said she knew a lot about endometriosis and these issues. She was delivering babies most days, so obviously her knowledge had to be spread out across all these things, whereas my understanding is Dr. Graham Trunk knows a lot more about the actual pain and disorders that can occur in the female reproductive system. Coincidentally, around this time, after filling out this questionnaire, I was also due to see my GP again, who I said obviously she takes things very seriously. I think I was going in for a pap smear that day that I was due for, and while I was in her office I said, I really think I need a referral to see this doctor that I am interested in seeing, the specialist, Dr. Trunk, and she took that very seriously. I think that's something I've learned over the years, really needing to advocate for myself and not ask, oh, what do you think is wrong? Can you do this? Like, I would really like, you can't beat around the bush. I just said, I need a referral. Can you write it for me? And she did. Again, I think she's fantastic. But she wrote the referral and I thought, okay, I can call in an appointment to see him, whatever the results may be of this questionnaire that I did, because I didn't have the results until I got home that day, and he sent an email reviewing all of my answers and the photos, and I was blown away. I finally felt so validated by a specialist, and obviously I've said my GP has been good, and I've seen some people who have been a bit more helpful over the years. Not everyone has been lazy and dismissive, but everything was just so comforting in this information that I received back from Dr. Trunk. So I'm already impressed already, haven't even met the guy, but he sort of said, yes, all of these symptoms add up, and I can see things in these photos from the surgery you had 8 years ago that the doctor missed, which obviously shocked me quite a bit. I was happy to have a diagnosis, and it was a bit of a shocking one, but yeah, it's a bittersweet feeling knowing that the problem was staring my other doctor right in the face, and for certain reasons I wasn't diagnosed back then. Long story short, without reading out this whole email that the doctor sent, he could see physical signs, at least 3 physical signs that I do have adenomyosis, and again, that's something he specializes in. He didn't like verbally like bash about the previous doctor. He said that a lot of times doctors are told that this disease doesn't show up in women until they're 30 or 40, and obviously I was 20 at the time I had my surgery, so maybe that's why she just dismissed it, but he could see it there. He diagnosed me with adenomyosis. Just from the pictures alone, he also said that there were certain areas he couldn't see, and he is very interested in checking because I could very well have endo as well, since my pain is kind of all-encompassing in that area. It's not just my uterus that hurts, which is where adenomyosis primarily affects, as well as like back pain and leg pain and just a bit of general pain. I think the endo needs to be checked because, again, he said there's certain spots that he did want to see that he couldn't see in the pictures where it could be hiding, and obviously this is just assessing pictures from 8 years ago. Who knows how everything's looking in there now. But I've got to meet with him, so I'll have a better plan of attack in terms of surgery and treatment. For the plan now, I'm going to be having a Mirena, I think. The IUD, it's what my GP said would help. She said that the Mirena or certain types of the pill can help a little bit better managing bleeding. I guess I've just been lucky to have sparse periods while on the bar, but apparently it doesn't control endo or adeno, again, not sure how to shorten that, bleeding very well. So I may have just been lucky this past couple of years with it. Now, apart from pointing out all the areas that he could see in the pictures, stating that that looked to be adenomyosis and sort of confirming certain symptoms, wanting to get on the path of another diagnostic laparoscopy, the doctor or specialist also told me that I needed to have another scan, but this time with, I think his word was a tertiary scanner, someone a little bit more specialized, and I found it quite funny. He said, don't go and see a suburban scanner, just see someone who is really looking for these sort of areas and has a lot of expertise. So that's what I did. I had that appointment last week actually, and again, the radiologist, she said she could see in the imaging that there were signs of adenomyosis, so that's very interesting. Obviously it's something that other scanners or radiologists haven't picked up before, but I don't think they were really looking for that. They were maybe just having a look around for cysts or some sort of other growth, not really these female reproductive issues. It's definitely a bittersweet feeling. For a long time, for so many years, I've known something was wrong, but now doctors do too, and that's just, I think, the best feeling. Just to know that I'm not crazy, this pain is real, and good news about that, this pain can be treated in a few different ways they're going to try, but I'm in a lot better place now than I was even, I'd say, a year ago, just having this pain and dealing with it, thinking that I was normal. So hopefully this video was somewhat interesting if you have clicked on it, if you're a regular watcher of mine. I think for myself it definitely fills in a lot of gaps and explains a lot, but maybe now it will make a bit more sense as to why I've been bitching and moaning for years about horrendous periods and the back pain. I think that explains a lot. And if you're watching it for the reason of thinking that you may have one of these issues like endo or adenomyosis, I guess we've got that in common together. But I think that's everything from me today. Watch this space because I'm going to be keeping you in the loop with everything in terms of my appointment and surgery that is going to be upcoming very soon. But I think with that, I'll be wrapping it up here. So I just wanted to thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please give me a thumbs up if you did, and subscribe if you haven't already. But like I said, I will be leaving you here, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye!